David came to us on a Thursday. I remember the day because we ordered pizza every Thursday. The kids always loved pizza night. But he just stood in the doorway. 19 years old, thin as a rail, arms covered in bruises. His eyes, God, I'd rarely seen eyes like that, like someone had turned off all the light inside them. The social worker, Mrs. Rodriguez, whispered in my ear. Domestic violence. Alcoholic father. Mother ran away a year ago. The boy had been living alone in that hell. I walked up to David, extended my hand. Hi, I'm Mr. Harris. He didn't shake it, just looked right through me, like I was a ghost. Are you hungry? I asked. David stayed silent. I led him to the kitchen. The other kids were already eating pizza, laughing, talking, the usual noise of a group home. David sat in the far corner, took a slice of pizza, ate slowly, carefully, like he was afraid someone would take it away. I knew that fear. Many of our kids ate like that the first few days. Suddenly, Jamie, our 8-year-old joker, threw a piece of tomato at someone. Everyone laughed. Normal kid stuff. But David changed completely. His face turned red, his hands clenched into fists. He jumped up from his chair so fast it fell over. Shut up, he screamed at Jamie. His voice shook with rage. Shut up, you hear me? The kitchen went quiet. Everyone stared at David, and he stood there trembling, all red, breathing hard like he'd been running. I approached slowly, kept my hands where he could see them. David, it's okay. Jamie was just joking. I know, he yelled in my face. I'm not stupid, it's just... And suddenly he started crying. Not just crying, sobbing. His whole body shook with it. He sat right down on the floor and covered his face with his hands. I hate myself, he whispered through the tears. I hate myself. I crouched down beside him. Didn't touch him, didn't hug him. Just sat there. The other kids quietly drifted away. Jamie looked scared. I nodded at him. Not your fault, kid. We sat like that for about 5 minutes. David crying, me just being there. Finally, he wiped his nose with his sleeve. Sorry, he said quietly. I didn't mean to yell. I know, I replied. First days are always hard. He looked at me. Really looked at me for the first time. And this'll happen a lot, he said. I can't control myself. Something just breaks inside me. And I understood. This boy knew about his problem. Knew it and was afraid of it. That was worse than just uncontrolled anger. This was anger, plus shame about it. Tell me about it, I said. David shook his head. Not now, maybe never. That's okay, I nodded. But know this, I'm here when you're ready. That night I couldn't sleep for a long time. I thought about that boy, about his eyes, about how he said, I hate myself. 20 years of this work and taught me something. The hardest kids are the ones who understand that something's wrong with them. They're not just fighting the problem, they're fighting the shame of it too. David was exactly that kind of kid. David's room was next to mine. I heard him every night, pacing, back and forth. Sometimes he'd punch the wall. Not hard, just frustrated little hits. The first week, he exploded 3 times. Once when Tommy accidentally knocked over David's water glass. Another time when the TV was too loud. The third time, I still don't know what triggered it. Each time was the same. Red face, clenched fists, screaming, then tears. than that quiet shame that broke my heart every time. "I'm sorry," he'd whisper. I'm sorry. The other kids started avoiding him. I couldn't blame them. When someone's anger is that big, that sudden, it's scary, even for kids who've seen plenty of scary things. But little Sarah was different. 7 years old, been with us 6 months. Her parents died in a car crash. She had this way of seeing people's pain. After David's third explosion, she walked up to him. He was sitting in the corner, head in his hands. "My daddy used to get angry too," Sarah said quietly, "when he drank the bad water." David looked up. His eyes were red from crying. "I don't drink," he said. "I know," Sarah nodded. "But anger is anger. It hurts the same." She sat down next to him. Didn't touch him, just sat there. David stared at her for a long moment. How did you deal with it?" he asked. "I hid," Sarah said simply. "In my closet, until Daddy fell asleep." "I can't hide from myself," David whispered. "No," Sarah agreed. "But maybe you don't have to fight it alone." I watched from the doorway. This little girl who'd lost everything, teaching a 19-year-old about not being alone. Sometimes kids understand things we adults miss. That night, David knocked on my door. First time he'd come to me. "Can we talk?" he asked. We sat in my small office. David in the old leather chair, me behind my desk. He was quiet for a long time. "My dad hit me every day for 10 years, he finally said. Voice flat, like he was reading from a book. "Every day?" I asked gently. "Every day I was home. Sometimes I'd stay at school late, hide in the library. But eventually, I had to go home." David rubbed his arms. Old habit. I noticed he did it when he was nervous. He'd drink. Then he'd find something I did wrong. Dishes not clean enough. Homework on the table. Breathing too loud. David's voice got smaller. "Always something. What about your mother?" She tried to stop him, at first. David's jaw tightened. Then one day she just left. Packed a bag while I was at school. Gone. I felt something cold in my stomach. "She left you with him?" "Left a note. Said she was sorry. Said she couldn't take it anymore." David's hands were shaking now. "She couldn't take it anymore. But somehow I was supposed to. That wasn't fair," I said. "No," David agreed. "It wasn't." "The anger started after she left," David continued. "I'd get so mad. At her, at him, at myself for not being good enough for her to stay." "You were a child, David. It wasn't your fault." "I can go that here," he tapped his head. "But not here," he tapped his chest. We sat in silence. Outside, I could hear the other kids getting ready for bed. Normal sounds. Toothbrushes, running water, quiet laughter. "The worst part," David said quietly, "is that I feel like him sometimes. When I get angry, I see his face in the mirror." "But you're not him," I said. "You don't hurt others. You hurt yourself. Is that better?" "No," I admitted, "but it's different." David stood up. "Thank you for listening, Mr. Harris." "Anytime," I said. "That's what I'm here for." After he left, I sat in that chair for another hour, thinking about a little boy who learned that love means staying, even when it hurts, and how that lesson can break a person. But also thinking about Sarah, about how healing sometimes comes from the smallest, most unexpected places. After our talk, something changed in David. Not big, not obvious, but I'd been doing this long enough to notice. He started eating breakfast with the others. Still sat at the end of the table, still barely talked. But he was there, present. Sarah made it her mission to include him. She'd save him the last piece of toast, ask him to help with puzzles. Simple things. But David, he responded. Sarah asked me to help her with math homework, he told me one evening. I said yes. How did it go? She's smart. Smarter than me at her age. David almost smiled. She said I'm a good teacher. I watch them sometimes. David explaining fractions to Sarah. Patient, gentle, his voice quiet but steady. In those moments, the anger seemed far away. But it wasn't gone. 2 weeks later, Marcus came to us. 15 years old, tough kid from the south side. Chip on his shoulder the size of Texas. Marcus tested everyone, pushed boundaries, made jokes at others' expense. It was his way of feeling safe. David managed to avoid Marcus for 3 days. But you can't avoid someone forever in a group home. It happened during dinner. Marcus was telling some story about his old neighborhood, getting loud, showing off. So I told that cop, Marcus laughed, "You can't touch me, I know my rights." David was cutting his chicken, focusing hard on his plate, and see his jaw getting tighter. "Course, some people just take whatever's coming to them," Marcus continued. He looked right at David. "No fight at all." David's knife stopped moving. "Like they're scared of their own shadow," Marcus pushed. "Probably never stood up to anyone in their whole life." I started to intervene, but it was too late. David exploded, but not like before. This time he stood up slowly, deliberately. His voice was quiet, deadly quiet. "You don't know anything about me," David said. Each word precise, cold. Marcus grinned. He thought he was winning. "Hit a nerve, did I?" That's when David snapped. David lunged across the table, fast as lightning. Got Marcus by the shirt before anyone could react. "You want to see fight?" David's voice was shaking with rage. "I'll show you fight." But then something stopped him. His fist was raised. Marcus was scared now, really scared. And David saw it. David saw himself in that moment, saw what he was becoming, what he was about to do. He let go of Marcus, stepped back. His whole body was trembling. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Not to Marcus, to everyone, to the room. "I'm sorry." He ran outside. I found him 20 minutes later, sitting on the back steps, staring at his hands. "I almost hit him," David said without looking up. "I wanted to hurt him so bad." "But you didn't," I pointed out. "This time." David's voice was hollow. "What about next time?" I sat down beside him. The evening air was cool. Crickets chirping in the distance. "Tell me what stopped you," I said. David was quiet for a long moment. "Sarah," he finally said. "I thought about Sarah, about how she'd look at me if I became like him." "That's progress, David. You found your anchor." "My what?" "Something that pulls you back. Something stronger than the anger." I looked at him. "That's huge." David shook his head. "It doesn't feel huge. It feels like I'm 1 second away from destroying everything." "Maybe," I said. "But you didn't. You chose not to. This time." "Yes, this time, and hopefully next time too." We sat there as the sun went down, David picking at the grass, me just being present. "Mr. Harris?" David said quietly. "Yeah? Do you think I can get better? Really better?" I thought about all the kids I'd seen over the years. The ones who made it, the ones who didn't. The thin line between hope and heartbreak. "I think," I said carefully, "that you're already better than you were 3 weeks ago." "That's not really an answer." "No," I admitted, "but it's the only honest one I can give you." David nodded. He understood. In this work, we take what progress we can get, one day at a time, one choice at a time. David stayed with us for 8 months. Not because he had nowhere else to go. He got a job at the local garage, could have gotten his own place, but he stayed. Said he wasn't ready yet. Said he needed to learn more about himself before he could be alone again. The anger didn't disappear. I want to be clear about that. This isn't one of those stories where love conquers all and everyone lives happily ever after. David still had bad days, Days when his face would go red over something small, when his hands would shake with the effort of not hitting something. But the bad days got further apart. And when they came, David had tools now. He'd excuse himself, go to his room, do the breathing exercises the counselor taught him. Sometimes he'd find Sarah and ask her to tell him a story. Her voice seemed to calm something inside him. "She saved me," he told me once. "This little girl who lost everything, she saved me." "Maybe you saved each other," I said. David considered this. Maybe. The real test came in month 6. David's father showed up. Drunk, angry, demanding to see his son. It was a Tuesday evening. Kids were doing homework in the common room. I heard the shouting from outside. Saw David freeze at the kitchen table, pencil snapping in his hand. "Where is he?" his father's voice boomed. "Where's my boy?" David stood up slowly. His whole body was rigid. The old fear was back in his eyes. But something else too. Something new. "I have to face him," David said quietly. "No, you don't. I can call the police." "I have to," David repeated. "If I don't do it now, I never will." Sarah appeared at David's side, took his hand, didn't say anything, just held on. David looked down at her. Something in her face softened. "Okay," he said, "but not alone." We walked outside together. David, me, and Sarah. His father was leaning against a rusty pickup truck, bottle in a paper bag. "There he is," his father slurred. "My disappointment of a son." David's jaw tightened. I saw his free hand clench into a fist. But Sarah squeezed the other hand. He looked down at her, took a breath. "Hello, Dad," David said. His voice was steady, calm. "That's all you got to say? After running off? After abandoning your family?" "You abandoned me first," David said quietly. "Every day, for 10 years. His father's face twisted with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "I'm not little anymore," David interrupted. Still calm, still steady. "And I'm not yours anymore either. You'll always be mine, you hear me? My blood, your victim," David finished. "But not anymore." His father took a step forward, aggressive, threatening. The old David would have either cowered or exploded. This David stood his ground, protective arm around Sarah. "You need to leave," David said. "Now." "Or what?" "Or nothing. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to hurt you, but I'm not going to let you hurt me anymore either." Something in David's voice made his father stop. Maybe it was the certainty, the lack of fear. His father stared at him for a long moment, then spat on the ground. "You always were weak," he said, but his voice had lost its power. "No," David said. "I was scared. There's a difference." His father got back in his truck, drove away, never came back. David stood there for a long time after the truck disappeared, Sarah still holding his hand. "You did good," she said softly. "Yeah," David said. "I think I did." 2 months later, David moved into his own apartment, small place about a bakery. He visits every Sunday, brings Sarah books from the library. The anger is still there, probably always will be. But David learned something important in those 8 months. He learned that anger doesn't have to control you, that you can feel it without becoming it, that healing isn't about forgetting the past, it's about choosing your future. And sometimes, just sometimes, a little girl who lost everything can teach a grown man how to find himself again. And that's David's story, still being written, one day at a time.